Not.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity today to speak to an incredibly important piece of legislation, Bill C-50, the Canadian Sustainable Jobs Act. For many reasons, the people of Canada are going through challenging times. I think we can all agree. Many of them unprecedented. Canadian workers, jobs, and the global economy were heavily affected by the global pandemic. And on top of that, we experienced unprecedented wildfire levels over the summer. It's been reported that there were 6,118 wildfires that have burned 15 million hectares, and 200,000 people were placed under evacuation orders, which experts say were influenced by climate change. Like the rest of the world, Canada must adjust if we want to give ourselves a fighting chance against climate change. Many Canadians have already had climate change impact their work, including workers in the agricultural industry, fishing, emergency services, tourism, the interruption of supply chains. Many elements of mining and mining infrastructure have also been significantly affected by climate change. I could go on, but suffice to say, few sectors and few hardworking Canadians will be able to carry on as normal at their jobs or in their lives as long as the planet continues to heat up. This has been, as it's been noted, one of the hottest seasonal temperatures on record. Warm ocean temperatures, more Category 5 hurricanes, and many extreme weather events that I'm sure we've seen played out in the media over the course of the last year. I think all of us rightfully are concerned and should be doubling down or tripling down our efforts on fighting climate change. With Bill C-50, our government is determined to help Canadian workers stay ahead of the curve in today's rapidly changing job market. Madam Speaker, if parliamentarians are committed to supporting Canadian workers through this time, the time being the transition to a low-carbon economy, we must come together across party lines and work together. Certainly, we don't need more signs from Mother Nature that we need to do this right now. I think Mother Nature has given us plenty of signs for decades now, and it's time to get on with this. And I think this bill makes a significant contribution to our climate action efforts. But the need to move fast doesn't mean we need to do this piecemeal or thoughtlessly or carelessly. Canadian workers, their families, and their communities, whether they're in our largest cities or in the farthest reaches of our territories, need substantive, clear legislation that commits Canada's government to action that supports them. Madam Speaker, this act was written after extensive consultation with the people it's intended to help, which is a primary principle that I think all good consultation work has within it, which is to include the people that are most impacted. Their words assisted us in defining its purpose to help the government facilitate the creation of sustainable jobs for Canada's workers while seizing opportunities for economic growth, to provide support for workers and their communities in the shift to a low-carbon economy and ensure transparency, accountability, and ongoing engagement with Canadians across every region of the country on issues like training, workers' rights, the job market, economic growth, and, of course, reducing emissions. This framework and all federal action on sustainable jobs will be guided by the principles enshrined in this legislation. Principles that will strengthen our collective efforts, ensuring that all of Canada's national policies and programs and the federal entities that carry out this work are grounded in the fundamental values that underpin this work, along with international best practices, and delivered equitably and fairly and inclusively. This means that this act supports the creation of decent, high-quality work opportunities for Canadians by establishing a framework for effective action. Through this framework, we will be better positioned to address the barriers that have it difficult for some to join the workforce. This legislation has 4 guiding principles developed in consultation with Canadians, built on guidelines adopted by the International Labour Organization and tailored to fit with what Canadians value. The first principle reflects the need for adequate, informed, and ongoing social dialogue between government, workers, and industry. Social dialogue is a term used by the International Labour Organization to describe all types of communication that help build understanding and consensus about issues impacting the workforce. The government believes that this is a must if we want to shift to a low-carbon economy to succeed for Canada's workers, their families, and their communities. The second guiding principle of this legislation is that the policies and programs that are put in place should support the creation of decent work, meaning good-paying, high-quality jobs, including union jobs. It's work that's productive and delivers a fair income. It's work that gives workers a voice in decisions that affect them. Madam Speaker, labor policies and programs influenced by this legislation should consider job security and social protections to reduce and prevent poverty and vulnerability among Canada's workers, as well as ongoing social dialogue. We also need the policies and programs associated with sustainable jobs to recognize local and industry-specific needs. During our extensive consultations, Canadians have told us openly and directly that they want Canada's government to acknowledge with real action that regions dominated by fossil fuel jobs have unique needs and also unique opportunities. They told us that our policies need to reflect the fact that workers in high-emitting industries need pathways to low-carbon industries as the world shifts to different sources of energy. I can assure the members of this House that we hear those concerns. Closely related to that is the need for our policies and programs to reflect workers' cultural values, strengths, and their potential, while we create an environment where workers, businesses, investors, and consumers can create sustainable, inclusive economies and societies. The third guiding principle in this Act recognizes that shifting to a low-carbon economy presents an important opportunity to improve the diversity of Canada's workforce and address barriers to the participation of marginalized and underrepresented groups in the labor force. Let me use the mining industry as an example. The industry's need to hire more workers is an opportunity to diversify its workforce. Women and people who have been granted permanent resident status in Canada are vastly underrepresented in mining, making up only 15% and about 7% of its workforce, respectively. And while mining is the second largest employer of Indigenous peoples in Canada, accounting for 12% of the upstream mining workforce, the data shows us that Indigenous peoples overwhelmingly hold entry-level manual jobs. We can and must unlock the potential of Canada's underrepresented population groups if we are to have enough workers to fill all of the jobs that expect to be created over the next 2 decades. And it is a significant number of jobs, Madam Speaker. RBC has reported by the end of 2030, so in the next decade or before the end of the next decade, this could create as much as 400,000 jobs in Canada. Madam Speaker, because the need to fight climate change and expand sustainable employment is a global issue, the last guiding principle in the Sustainable Jobs Act is international cooperation. Canada already works routinely and extensively with other countries, and we're proud that international cooperation is widely considered to be one of our strengths. Canada is playing a leadership role on the international stage to promote an inclusive and people-centered, and I would highlight and underline and emphasize people-centered approach to the clean energy shift or transition, leading on a range of initiatives to advance sustainable jobs while promoting diversity and inclusion of marginalized groups in the clean energy sector. Notably, Canada is leading the Equal by 30 campaign, which encourages voluntary commitments from both public and private sector organizations to work toward equal pay, equal leadership, and equal opportunities for women and other marginalized groups in the energy sector by 2030. And Canada co-leads the Clean Energy Ministerial's Empowering People initiative with the United States and the European Commission, which brings together like-minded partners to advance people-centered transitions. There's more collaboration I could mention, but in the interest of time, I'll stop there. Madam Speaker, in our extensive consultations with Canadians, we were told to bring our people-centered approach to our international work, and we agree wholeheartedly. People-centered legislation makes it easier for our policies to remain coherent at every level of government. But more importantly, it's critical to ensuring that Canadians have equal access to a variety of social supports or job training and to job opportunities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Time is up.